The IRB process at Empire is described in the graduate catalog that you see excerpted here. You gain access to the process through the link shown here as well. Securing an IRB is a multi-step process. You need to have successfully completed the CIT process and then complete an application form that addresses your audience and your project. As part of this application process, you're going to be submitting letters or brochures that explain your intended work. In the course, I've provided examples from my work. Don't use them directly, but you can use them to learn and then adapt to your situation. Key things as you go about filling in this data about your work: be 100% consistent with the language that you use throughout the IRB process. Do not have your readers trying to do this type of checking. They're going to be not too happy if they have to be noting that you have inconsistencies. You're going to have all your letters ready to submit. So as you read through the process, think about the letters that are going out to parents and or your audience. And you'll also be having the recruitment procedures about how you'll engage people in this process. This will be explained in this tutorial, but be sure that you are very consistent and accurate with the work that you do. In completing the IRB form, you are the principal investigator, and you need to indicate that you took the CIT training. The school gets a record of who passed this test. It will take you between 2 to 4 hours to do that test. Indicate the faculty sponsor too, and any other investigators that are working with you. You need to have a reasonably short but meaningful title for the project. Consider this the working title for your actual final project. And the stop and start dates will be the semester within you anticipate actually conducting the project. You will need to describe the project in an overview sense, justifying the value of the project within this process. You should have this information already from the questions that you created and the justification that you originally had when you started your work. You should provide several good references to the literature here using APA format. This is a quasi-problem statement. It means it establishes the merit of your work. You may use a sentence or two to set the bigger picture of the value of your work within the larger context, but your focus in this IRB application will be on the actual audience or students that you anticipate working for during the following semester. So narrow in quickly to the actual individuals that you will need access to and that you'll be interacting with the materials that you create. You'll be explaining a lot more about these individuals in the remainder of this application. Develop the research questions from the questions that you used when you were framing the study and from your research into the literature. Look back to the questions that you considered in the first module when you were framing questions that could help you dig into the literature. Cast these now into the perspective of the individuals that you will be studying. Address the subjects that you will be studying, particularly if they're minors under 18 years of age. You're going to need much more documentation that will come later in the application. This is going to be self-evident. Address this question if it's relevant to you. If you're working with adults, though, that may eventually work with minors, unless you're having these adults bringing these minor students into your study, you can consider your audience to simply be the adults. Address this question if it is relevant. You will need to address this question if you're working with schools, particularly K-12 schools and possibly even higher education. You will need to get approval letters from the superintendent in K-12 environments, not just the building principal. Later in this application, you'll be looking at how to create these letters and how to explain your study within these letters. You will need to explain how you're going to get your audience. Will they be from students in a class? Will they be individuals who volunteer to be in your study? Will they be individuals that you'll recruit through websites or the like? You will need to develop the letter or brochure that goes to these individuals, and you'll be submitting this. Be sure that you are completely consistent with what you write in here and throughout the IRB request. The reviewers will be looking for that. Particularly if you're going to have a more open-ended approach, such as recruiting through the web, Give then an approximate number of how many you think will be coming to you through this means. Answer as relevant. You need to state, though, if you're also giving a badge or certificate to those who participated. What you put here will depend upon the study that you're creating. You need to inform the participants that you are conducting a study. In this letter or notification, you should take the time to explain why their participation will be valued. Is it going to improve the understanding and effectiveness in the field? That could be a good reason for their participation. You will have to let them know if and how intrusive the study itself will be. Is it simply part of the work they're going to be doing in a course, or will it take extra time and effort on their part? As stated in the application, you're going to have to explain how you'll make the research process evident to the individuals that will be participating. For many of you, you will be explaining this process through the letter that you're going to be creating that'll be considered later in this application. Here you're going to explain how you will get the consent for adults, or assent if the students are under 18. If you're working with K-12, for instance, you would have letters that would go home to parents and to the students. In the letter, you will also have information about how students can withdraw from the study and the like. These are the items that should be in the consent form that you're creating. You're going to have some examples in the course from consent forms that I've created in the past. This section now narrows you into one or two methods that you're going to be using to gain the understanding of whether your curriculum or project is meeting the expectations that you've created. You do not need to use any particular instrument to meet the final project requirements. What you want is to select the method that makes the most sense for the work you're doing and the audience that you will have. You may have students or website visitors conducting certain tasks as they read, review, or visit your work. You may have other approaches. Determine the category that's most relevant to the information that you want to find from your audience. Right now this is a checklist, and a few sections later in the application you're going to be asked to describe this in more detail. Address this point if appropriate, otherwise indicate there's no deception that will be used. Proceed as indicated to describe the area that you checked off above. As I constantly point out, though, be entirely consistent in this narrative with the terminology and concepts that you've used in other parts of the application. Now think about the data that you hope to get. Explain for the IRB reviewers what you will use to protect these individuals. Will you have coded names when you're reporting? Will you keep these terms private? I doubt any of you are providing compensation, so you'd simply indicate that here. Unless you believe otherwise, indicate that you anticipate minimal risk to no risk to the participants. You'll be protecting names and identities in any reported information. Unless you believe otherwise, indicate that you'll have minimal risk to participants. You will be protecting names and identities in any reported information. Address this as appropriate to your audience. In a K-12 situation, you might want to consider how you would remove someone from the study if you thought the work was particularly stressful to them. You've created good rationales for why you're conducting this study in the first place. Use these in the answer that you create to this part of the application. Use common sense here and make it relevant to your audience. You may or may not have an intentional debriefing. This just might not be a relevant question. Therefore, address this as appropriate to your situation. Here you want to consider where and how any information may be stored. Will you be using a computer? Will it be secure or have password protection? Will information have code names associated with any data gathered? Will there be any print materials? And if so, how will you keep them secure? Will the data be used only for one study? And if you intend to use it for more studies, then you need to indicate how you would go back to your audience and ask for their extended use. For here, consider that you have master's level coursework on the ethical treatment of subjects, and you'll also have your CITI certification. If you have more credentials from other courses or certificates, enter that here too. You'll need to get a faculty signature here too. I have to learn if there's an online way to do this, but I have to make sure that I get my signature in here when you submit this application.